Today we're on day 48 of our walk through scriptures for the year, and we are in Leviticus chapter 8, Mark chapter 3, Proverbs 5, 1 through 14. Now in Mark today, I see Jesus, of course, as the Son of God, as miracle maker, healing disease, infirmity, driving out demons. Mostly though, I see Jesus as a real life person with real life emotions. I see Jesus as someone who gets angry, who becomes frustrated, who is misunderstood, and who sometimes maybe even says the wrong thing. I see Jesus in me. Jesus became angry and deeply distressed when those in the synagogue were silent, when he asked, "Which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or to kill?" Now that seems like it should be a pretty simple answer, right? Yet not so much for the stubborn hearts of the religious people who had become more rule followers than God followers. Jesus was trying to teach them, and they just were not getting it. And their response, or maybe their lack of response, made Jesus angry, and rightly so. Sometimes we preach Jesus as love to the extent that we ignore the idea that love might also include righteous anger at injustice, anger at the mistreatment of others, of hard-heartedness. Jesus was doing God's will in the world, and yet when he entered the house in Mark 3:20, and people gathered around him, his family arrived to take charge of him because they said he was out of his mind. Well, Jesus was most definitely misunderstood, right? And not out of his mind. His own family saw Jesus as crazy when, in fact, he was simply doing God's work in the world. Have you ever felt that way? That others look at you as a little bit or a lot crazy because you're doing things differently? Following God instead of following all the worldly expectations? I guess we're in pretty good company if once in a while people think we're a little crazy because our thoughts and our actions are so different from their own because we're following Jesus. Finally, every time I read that last chapter, the last few verses, I find myself wondering what Jesus really meant to say, and if he really meant to say it in this way, or even quite that bluntly. When told that his mother and brothers were looking for him, Jesus replied, "Who are my mother and brothers?" Now, I realize the point Jesus was trying to make, but to me, "Who are my mother and brothers?" seems a little harsh, even to make a point. Maybe Jesus didn't realize his words would be hurtful. Maybe he was angry. Or maybe he just didn't realize they would be recorded for all eternity. And maybe it was intentional. I don't know. But what I do know is sometimes words slip out of my own mouth that maybe end up being hurtful and were not meant that way, or were interpreted differently than what I intend. The bottom line is that in Mark chapter 3, I see Jesus in me, in the good and the not so good of me. And I need to think about that and be intentional about that, don't I? Let it be, dear Lord. Let it be.